Hi everyone, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. So today I know I'm very late to the party, but to be fair, I only just started this booktube channel. I'm going to share with you my top books of 2023. Just for being transparent, I have already written a blog post about this on my blog raspberrythriller.com. So I'm going to refer to that blog post and summarize the books that I read for you that were my either 4-star or 5-star reads last year. All right, so let's get into it. So the first book, and I don't think this will come to a huge surprise to most of you, especially since you hopefully now know that I like historical fiction, but my first favorite book of 2023 was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So I've got my copy right here. So Hamnet, yes, historical fiction. Maggie O'Farrell did a beautiful job writing this. I've been really wanting to get to the marriage portrait this year because I enjoyed this book so much. So Hamnet, if you aren't familiar with it, is about, well, I'd say it's about Shakespeare, but it's actually not. It's about Shakespeare's wife, Anne, or Inez, as she's known in the book, and Inez's experience as both a wife and a mother. And this book is very much set in themes of grief and family dynamics. You don't actually really learn a lot about Shakespeare, and he's not even referred to William Shakespeare in the work. It is mostly centered around Inez. Something that I really enjoyed about this book, and again, given my background, it's not surprising, is that Inez is very well versed in medicinal remedies and herbal remedies. So yeah, any book that features strong women with an expertise in herbalism and medicine always gets my stamp of approval. Another aspect that I really enjoyed about this work, and I suppose the writing in particular, is how it really took you to the time period. So there were two examples that come to mind. So firstly, you really got a sense of the house that Shakespeare grew up in and then lived in as a husband before he sort of became famous and moved to London. And I loved that sense of history. It was almost as if the house itself was a character in the story. I have been to Stratford-upon-Avon and I've seen Shakespeare's home, and I can say that this does a good job depicting this. And then later on, towards the end of the novel, you have a scene set in London and sort of going into London and the busyness of the streets, and I think it's London Bridge, but one of the bridges anyways, and just the sort of chaos of life in Shakespearean England, and how noisy and filthy the streets would have been at that time. So yes, I really enjoyed her scene setting in particular. And then the last element that I really enjoyed about this book was, trying to, without spoiling it, there's an excerpt about a flea, thinking about the bubonic plague and how the plague sort of travels around Europe and comes to be in this particular context. And oh, that was so fascinating, so well written. Yeah, so I loved the story. I thought it was really heart-wrenching, the bits about loss and grief. I also loved Maggie O'Farrell's writing style, and I like the attention to detail that she gave to writing this book. And if you read the bit in the back of the book, she talks a little bit about how she researched for Hamnet. And yeah, I think Maggie O'Farrell did a brilliant job, and I'm not surprised this has become such a well-received work. So yeah, I gave it 4 or 5 stars, I can't remember, but yeah, obviously it's one of my favorite books of the year, so well worth a read if you haven't read it already. The next book I'd like to share with you, I don't have a physical copy because I read this as an ebook through the Libby app via my public library. And this is The Night She Disappeared by Lisa Jewell. If you're into Lisa Jewell or just thrillers in general, I'm sure you've come across this work. It's very popular. But it is about a young woman named Lula or Tallulah who disappears, and then you have dual timelines of finding out the context of how and why she disappeared. And then the second timeline it more so involves her mother and a cold case investigation of Tallulah's disappearance, and sort of a separate storyline set around a local mansion and I think it's a private school nearby, and how sort of that scene and context overlaps with Tallulah's disappearance. It was brilliant. I mean, I look for easy writing when I read thrillers, so I want it to be sort of fast-paced, not too challenging to read, and it needs to have really good characters, decent writing. But most importantly, with a thriller, I think for everybody, is that you need to have that sense of surprise and that you don't predict the ending. And for that reason, this was one of the best thrillers that I've ever read, and certainly a top book of 2023. And next up, we have Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Again, this is a very well-known book. I've seen it a lot on Bookstagram and on BookTube. And this is a piece of nonfiction, environmental nature writing. And Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer is an expert in ecology, and she's also a person of an Indigenous background. And she does such a beautiful job of weaving science, she is a scientist, with oral history. Oh, we have Wilbur coming to visit. Here, let me just show you him for a second. Come up and have a look. There he is. You going to share the book with me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so this book is so beautifully written. She is a scientist, so she comes from a very analytical background. But she also interweaves sort of oral history of Indigenous peoples throughout her writing. There's one chapter in particular in here that I really enjoyed, and that was about the three sisters. So that's corn, squash, and beans, and the interconnected relationship of those three plants from a biodiversity perspective. But also from a sort of an Indigenous folklore perspective. So yeah, that was such a unique way of presenting that information. And obviously, being a work of sort of environmental nonfiction, it does focus quite a lot on climate change and changing landscapes because of climate change. So it's really important in that sense. But what's quite unique about this book is the Indigenous perspective and how important sort of respectful stewardship of the land is to Indigenous peoples in North America. And so through these important studies of ecological and environmental change in various locations across the US, and also the Indigenous stories and folklore that are connected to those places, Robin Wall Kimmerer sets out to really give you a better appreciation and understanding of the importance of our relationship with nature. I would say Robin Wall Kimmerer could have cut a little bit out of this book. It was a little bit long in parts, but nonetheless, I very much enjoyed it. It was obviously a top book of the year for me last year. Certainly my top, or one of my top nonfiction books of the year, and probably one of the best books with an environmental context that I've ever read. Next up, and I'm going to read the title, is What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing. And this is by a medical doctor and PhD Dr. Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And so this book is As the title suggests, it's told in a sort of interview or conversation style format about Oprah's background in terms of who she's interviewed throughout her career as a talk show host, and her kind of nonprofit work. So her interest in childhood trauma, and she sits down with Dr. Perry, and he has a clinical background in helping people with childhood trauma, and more of the, I suppose, like the data analysis or quantitative data on how many people, particularly in the US, have been exposed to trauma, not only just for childhood trauma, but also things like PTSD and war-related trauma as well. So I'll just flip through and give you an example. First of all, I really liked the format of this book. You can see here that it's got some really nice designs. It was really well laid out. And there are also, let's see if we can find some, there are some really good illustrations. So this one here is on patterns of stress and looking at sensitization and tolerance resistance. So yeah, it was a really helpful book, sort of like in terms of self-help, let's say. Or if you work like I do in an area related to mental health, then I think this is a really important book to have as a reference guide for understanding trauma. It's also a really helpful book to read if you yourself have experienced trauma, although I would say it is a very difficult and challenging book to read, so just tread carefully with it. And this book looks to reframe how we might look at somebody. So instead of saying, for example, with a person with challenging behavior or a child with challenging behavior, instead of saying like, oh, well, what's wrong with them? It's looking at, as the title suggests, in the context of, oh, well, what happened to them? What happened to you that could lead you to sort of react to situations in this way with your relationships or situations. It was a brilliant book. I think if you're interested in also just psychology and brain development and things like flight or fight response, cortisol levels, that sort of thing, how you manage stress, really interesting read. So I highly recommend it if you're interested in that type of nonfiction work. Next up, we have The Bandit Queens by Parini Shroff. So I don't have a copy of this because I read it as an ebook from my library. And this book was so funny, but also quite emotive and difficult to read. It's set in modern day India, and it's about a woman named Geeta, whose husband disappears, and then she kind of becomes like a pariah in her village, and a lot of the villagers think that she killed her husband. And then, so this isn't a spoiler, but basically other women in the village are having some difficult situations with their husbands for one reason or another, and they think that Geeta could help sort of take care of the situation. There's sort of this analogy of to remove your nose ring means to like become a widow. So yeah, they're asking Geeta to help them remove their nose rings. And so Geeta's kind of put in this awkward situation that she didn't kill her husband, but now she's been tasked to help other women kill their husbands. It was a really great book for looking at themes of like female empowerment, entrepreneurialism, like women's entrepreneurialism, feminism, and also classism, or like the caste system in India. I really felt sort of transported to Geeta's village, and had a really great insight into sort of the cultural and social dynamics of modern day India, and the characters were really well written, like funny, complex. You've got lots of good character development. The pace of the book was, I would say, medium paced, and the writing was really good, especially because it included some like colloquialisms or like modern dialect in this particular Indian village. And the reason why I wanted to read The Bandit Queens in the first place is because I read the book Out, and the name of the author escapes me right now. Natsuko, maybe? I'm not sure. I'll have to look it up and pop it on the screen. But yes, I read the book Out, which is set in Japan and has a very similar premise about women coming together to help sort of sort out some problems with the men in their lives. So yes, if you have read Out and you enjoyed it, then I highly recommend checking out The Bandit Queens. Brilliant book. I hope you can't hear the airplane flying outside. Is quite distracting for me. But anyways, the next book I would like to share with you is American Dirt by Janine Cummings. And this was a book that I read for my work book club last year. And this book is set in Mexico, and it involves a mother and her son needing to flee the cartel in Mexico. And most of the book is set on sort of their journey from where they live in Mexico up to the border with the US. It was interesting. The feedback that we got from when we discussed this book in the book club is that some of my colleagues felt that it just wasn't believable, but I really enjoyed it. I found it very compelling. It was one of those kind of like gripping books where I just wanted to get through it to find out what happens. So it was a challenging read, but I enjoyed the book because although some elements might seem a little bit unbelievable, the way I interpreted the book, and I could be wrong about this, but I interpreted it to be kind of a collection of fictionalized experiences of various migrant populations from both Mexico and Central South America, trying to navigate their way up to the US border and the challenges that they face on that journey, but also when they get to the border needing to have like assistance trying to cross illegally, experiences with ICE, the immigration unit of the US, and yeah, just the challenges and the context and perspective that somebody, to understand that if somebody is going to make that difficult journey, there must be a really good reason why they're making that journey. So yeah, it's quite a difficult subject. You can see a theme here. I like to read books with difficult subjects, but I really enjoyed it. I'm interested to know if you've read American Dirt, what did you think about it? Or if you haven't yet read it, maybe give it a go and then let me know what you think in the comments. And last but certainly not least, we have The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. So I mentioned this in one of my other videos because I want to get to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I read this last autumn. It's a very, if you're looking for a perfect cozy autumn or winter read, very much recommend this one. So as the name suggests, The Night Circus is about a circus, but it's a circus that is sort of built on all of this sort of mystery and fantastical, magical elements, and it's about two people who come together in an unexpected way. There is a love story element to this, but I like that I'm not a huge romance reader. I'm still trying to get into it, but I liked this romance. It was there, but not too in your face, and it was more so about the circus itself as being like the main character, I would say. The writing was really beautiful in this. So the name of the circus is Le Cirque de Rêves. Apologies if I'm butchering that in the French language, but you know, that means sort of like Circus of Dreams, right? and the writing comes across as a very dreamlike status. You sort of, I can kind of like describe it as you're sort of floating along, almost looking at the story from above, as if you're in that space of almost between being in deep sleep and being awake. So yeah, it was a beautiful book, well written. I highly recommend that you check it out. So if you've read this or any of Erin's other works, please do let me know in the comments your thoughts. So those are all the books that I featured on my blog, at least when I did my top books of the year. I try to not get carried away and do too many favorite books, but I thought I might as well just mention my honorable mentions here as well. So I enjoyed The Lido by Libby Page. That is a contemporary book about a Lido or Lido. How do you pronounce it? Is it Lido or Lido? An outdoor pool set in London, and it's about a relationship between a young woman who's a journalist and a woman who is sort of a central pillar of the Lido community, and basically they try and save the Lido from being shut down. And yeah, it was sweet. It was the cute relationships, and an enjoyable read. I also read on ebook through my library Outback by Patricia Wolfe, and this is a detective series. There's a second one that I've also read as well, called Paradise, and this is a thriller detective series set in Australia, and as the name suggests, Outback is set in the Outback, and it's basically about some backpackers who go missing, and then a detective who tries to find out what's happened, but also alongside the sister of one of the backpackers who went missing, who's from Germany, I think. Yeah, it was very gripping, fast-paced. So if you like that sort of fast-paced detective thriller, then I'm sure you'll enjoy it. And I really liked the writing in the sense of scene setting. You very much felt as if you were in the Outback with them, with the sense of the dryness, the temperature, the critters that are there, sort of the culture as well. Yeah, so very, very much recommend. And the last book that I just want to give a little shout out to is When the Stars Go Dark by Paula McLean. I listened to this on audiobook, and actually it's not the book itself that I kind of want to give a shout out to. It's Paula McLean's writing style. She writes in a very captivating way, and I suppose I read this book at a similar point to reading the What Happened to You book with Dr. Perry and Oprah, and so because that one's about childhood trauma, this book is about a kidnapping and has overlaps of childhood trauma as well. And I think Paula McLean has background working in like child protection services in the US, and so she could write about that really well. Yeah, it was an interesting plot and good characters, but just her writing in general, I really enjoyed, and I want to get to more of her writing in the near future. So yeah, better late than never, but those were all the books that I enjoyed the most in 2023. And as always, let me know your thoughts on these books in the comments below, but also let me know what some of your favorite books of 2023 were. And actually, since we're in 2024, do you have any firm favorites for 2024 yet? I'd be interested to know that as well. So if you're new, thank you very much for stopping by, and if you like my content, then please do subscribe. And for the people who are newly subscribed, thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I like how much my little community is growing. I hope you are all well and enjoying whatever you're reading, and I will be back soon with a new video. See you later. Bye.